The Brandon Best Podcast. Episode 1. Homo Deus, Cyborgs, Stairs. Follow on Instagram or Twitter at the Brandon M. Best for updates, to give feedback, and to get involved in the conversation.
Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome back. Today's episode is going to be a little bit different. Got some new segments that I'm going to try out. Going to do a bit of a book review, so to speak. Just talking about a couple books that I've been reading while being quarantined here. And going to try and do one current event and one random thought to rant on kind of later in the episode. So I'll just get it started here with actually, while I've been kind of going through this quarantine, I've read these two books. I'm actually almost not quite done the second one, but they are Homo Deus and Sapiens by Yuval Noah Harari. I think I'm saying that right. I think I mentioned Sapiens in the previous episode in the intro one, but kind of the reason I guess I wanted to bring them up. One, I guess they're the most recent ones I read, and I thought they're really good. But essentially, Sapiens is kind of about the human species. It's kind of like if you want to think about kind of in school, you learn usually, I guess, history of your own country in like social studies class, as it was called for me. And the book kind of is the same thing. You learn the history of and kind of the story of Homo sapiens, which is pretty cool. And it's kind of a weird read because you kind of understand, at least if you're not a anthropologist, you finally learn the story of how you came to be in terms of your species. And it's kind of funny how you're this creature and you have close to zero idea of how we even got to this point. So it was really cool. It was a cool read. Lots of really cool factoids, I guess, and scientific developments that kind of came out of anthropology and, like, I guess probably archaeology would fall into it as well. But essentially, the book is divided into three parts. So, based on revolutions. So, the first one was the cognitive revolution, and that was essentially centered around how different Homo sapiens brains were compared to other human subspecies. So, I guess one of the big surprises is that you learned that there was other subspecies of humans alive at the same time as Homo sapiens. I think I've probably went over this in the previous episode, but that was really weird. How, like, if you imagine today, walking around and there's a whole part of the world or other countries where there's other like human subspecies, and we're not even like the same thing. That would be so like weird. But yeah, and then the second one was the agricultural revolution. So it talks about how we go from these hunter-gatherer societies to living in like bigger towns and whatnot because of agriculture and being able to supply food to like a bunch of people. And then I believe the last one it talks about is the Industrial Revolution. But all in all, I think what struck me was how, I guess, so foundational the book seemed to understanding kind of who you are and where you come from. So I don't know. I thought I like to recommend it to people just because it seems like something that everyone should read. It should be kind of the part of that literature that everyone reads in school. I think Sapiens, at the very least, should definitely be one of those books. Um, but I doubt it would ever. It has some, I would say, maybe controversial points, at least more in the sequel Homo Deus. With regards to like religion and whatnot, it takes a pretty hard stance, I guess. Not really against it, but there's a lot of points that come up that could upset a lot of people, let's just say. And the second book I'm reading right now, and I'm on the last part, is called Homo Deus, A Brief History of Tomorrow. So this where Sapiens was looking at from the very beginning of humans all the way up to getting close up to now. Homo Deus is looking at kind of more recently today, a lot of I guess 2/3 of the book is like the 20th century, looking at, I guess, different dogmas and things and how humans have, or why we exactly care about growth and economic prosperity and building newer and better things. And I believe the last third of the book is supposed to be about his kind of the author's projection of where we're supposed to go. So, like, some of the main developments in technology he focuses on is like bioengineering. So, some people have heard of like talk of like designer babies, where you can choose like the hair color and texture and eye color of your child and whatnot through genetic engineering. Um, the advancement of computers, obviously, artificial intelligence specifically, he brings up quite a bit, and brain computer interfaces, which is kind of like a very, I don't know, I would say it's new. Um, it's new in the capacity of being able to use it for or purposes other than rehabilitation and treating neurological diseases like epilepsy and whatnot. If you don't follow something like Neuralink, there's a bunch of other BCI companies, but Neuralink is one of Elon Musk companies out of San Francisco, and basically what they are trying to do is they're trying to expand the bandwidth of how you can communicate with computers. So to understand why this is maybe their goal is that ever since we made computers, people could only communicate them with them through, really mouse and keyboard, but now obviously like touch screens, you can do a bunch of different gestures. And now with computer vision, like your Snapchat filters, when you like open your mouth and stuff, and the filter like reacts to that and whatnot. But basically, we've been increasing the different ways that computers can communicate information to us, but the amount of ways that we can communicate stuff to computers is still very limited. So they're trying to expand that. If you could, hook your brain up to a computer, then you could transmit your thoughts and ideas and stuff not only faster, but in a more, I guess, expansive way. And so these are called like brain computer interfaces, or BCIs, which I've had some interest in for a few years now, actually. So I went to I think it was in 20, I want to say 2018, summer 2018. I went to a conference in Philadelphia that was called Neuro Ergonomics. So it's basically like ergonomics, I believe, is about designing. It's like design of products and stuff and designing them a way that people can use them efficiently. And I guess neuro ergonomics is like neurotechnology and like neural based products and whatnot, and like science, I guess, based around it. It's like a super in its infancy. I think it was the only second time the conference was being held. But it's mostly like biomedical engineers and the actually a lot of military companies were there. Lockheed Martin, the United States Air Force Association was there, and it was cool to see all like the developments that people are working on trying to understand and basically extract information and, I guess, not really context, but basically what someone is thinking, feeling, or their intentions. That's an interesting one too, from just your electrical signals in your brain. So that was cool, like just to go and see where the technology's at. I just wanted to see how far off we were from the everyday consumer being able to use that kind of stuff, and what kind of applications it's going to have. It's kind of like my pipe dream is to start a company that does basically BCI tech. And most of the companies I think right now are doing non-invasive. So what that is the actual device that reads your brain waves is on the outside of your skin. It's just like maybe like a cap that you put on. These are like EEG helmets. Um, And then there's semi-invasive, where the electrodes that are reading your information go like underneath the scalp, but over top the skull bone, and then fully invasive is going right down the brain meat, which is what Elon Musk and Neuralink is doing. It's kind of the more far future approach, under the assumption that most people will be okay with implanting technology into their brain, given some kind of substantial benefits from that. Um, and that's kind of the one I think I would like to do too. But it's crazy how much in 2 years they push the most advanced like electrode, which is a part of the electronic, usually on the end of like some kind of wire or rod that's reading the information, goes into your brain. They were able to expand the number of electrodes on the end of a wire that could fit by like, I don't know, it was like 10 times more than what was the best we had at the time. So it's crazy how far they pushed the field forward in just 2 years. And I would really recommend watching their reveal event that was, I think, last year. But basically it showed how they plan on having these clinics where you can go in and the operation should be like LASIK. Like you don't even need to go to a hospital. It's like 15 minutes, and it's like a 4 millimeter by 4 millimeter chip that goes under your skin but on top of the skull bone. And then these wires come out and they go through these tiny little holes in your skull. And then the wires go and the electrodes are planted in specific spots around your brain, probably based on where your brain activity is, and however they figure out where they want to read it. So, and then beyond that, there's like a metal plate that goes behind your ear underneath your skin, and then there's like this little pod that is like magnetized to it and sticks behind your ear, and then you Bluetooth your phone and you control your phone with your like brain. And that's like the starting step in terms of a reason to use it outside of just medical purposes. So it's like a new muscle that you have to learn to work, and you're starting to communicate with devices using just your mind. So it looks crazy, and I think the holes in your skull are so tiny because the wires are like nanometers in width, like incredibly, incredibly small. You actually can't even see them. And so they actually had to build their own robot to do the surgery to put it in, because a surgeon, a human being, can't even see the wires. It's so small. And because the magnification on the camera is so, can go down so far, it can see the spaces between individual like blood vessels essentially. So when it's inserting these electrodes, it could go around all your blood vessels. So there's like minimal trauma. So you don't have to worry about, oh, if I, get version one implanted and then they come out with a better one, am I going to be able to upgrade easily, or is it going to basically like, am I stuck with that and whatnot? So it makes it easy to upgrade and take it out if there's a problem or whatever. So it's, I think it was a big surprise for a lot of people, um, how sci-fi it all seemed and how close things are moving along. They said they're trying to do, I think it was Q4 2020, start doing human trials, but I guess with this whole pandemic, I imagine that might be pushed back. The FDA might be more focused on supporting or expediting processes with like vaccines and stuff for COVID-19, I'd imagine. But yeah, that's something I'd really suggest looking at the reveal event for Neuralink. It's on YouTube. I think it's probably maybe 45 minutes, an hour long. So it is like quite a bit of a watch, but I think you can skip through the first 15 minutes or so. They don't even start. It's just like a countdown. And then there's like a presentation just explaining what, like how your brain kind of works. I think it's just for people who don't know anything about neurology or anything of the sort. So yeah, if you don't have that background, then probably watch that part, I would say. What else? So yeah, Homo Deus, Yuval Noah Harari or Sapiens, could be a good read to pick up while you're in quarantine to entertain yourself. And if I don't know if you guys have any books that you have been reading through quarantine that you find be entertaining, kill some time that are good. Yeah, I'd love to hear them. I guess through Instagram or Twitter, whatever you want to do, let me know, and I'll have a look at them and give me something to talk about on the podcast. Okay, what's next? We got let's do a little current event. There was a really bizarre thing that happened, I guess, in the music slash gaming world. Travis Scott had a virtual concert, I guess, in Fortnite where he debuted a new song, which is, I guess, an unprecedented event, which is strange how Fortnite seems to be a first for all these weird little milestones, I guess you could say, where I was reading 12 million people tuned in to hear this debut. So it's weird how entertainment is, and I mean this might just be because of the whole pandemic, but how entertainment is moving slowly to a more virtual realm and taking place in these like virtual spaces. And I mean, if I try and think about what would those numbers be for that debut without the pandemic, if it would still be vastly larger than, I don't know, doing it at a concert or in some other way. I mean, this one might be a bad example because usually you just debut a song by uploading it to your YouTube or um, whatever, putting it on iTunes and whatnot. Um, but if the numbers are going to be larger, um, debuting or doing something in a virtual space than doing it in real life, I wonder how many more events are gonna just slowly move um, into like a virtual space instead, just purely based off accessibility. You don't have to be at a certain place, go to a stadium. There's no like real capacity limits on how many people can attend. It's probably honestly cheaper as well, because it's not like they have to pay like the venue and all the staff and whatnot to run the event. And I don't even think, I'm not even sure if anyone had to pay to attend this thing in Fortnite. I don't think it didn't say in the article I read, but I wonder how much Epic actually paid him to do that. It must have been, I mean, it had to be, I guess, substantial enough to want to do it. Not that there's any alternative to making money to debuting a new song. I think as a music artist, you probably just put it out there. I don't know. But I thought that was interesting, not because of what it is and the medium that was it was put out on, but the fact that some events, social events, things of that nature that usually are done in in a stadium or whatever are slowly moving virtually. And if this is perfectly aligned with, maybe gives more incentive for people to get VR headsets, which has actually come a long way and is getting really good. Actually, it is really good. If you haven't done like VR on one of the newer VR headsets, like the HTC Vive Pro, I've never used an Oculus, so I can't speak for that one, but I would definitely recommend trying it. It's pretty crazy how good it is now, but it's still really, really expensive. I think to get the HTC Vive Pro, I think I was looking at it was like $1,500, $1,200. It could be 15 to get the wireless attachment. Um, so I think that's mainly the big barrier between people kind of jumping onto the VR train is because it's still really expensive. Um, Even though there's cheaper options, like you can get these little, I know Google has like a little attachment that you put your phone on and you use your phone as like the VR headset. But it's obviously pales in comparison to the fully dedicated ones. But it'd be interesting to try. I'd I'd have to look up actually how much that Google little VR attachment is for your phone because I'd actually be willing to try one and have it. That'd actually be that'd be cool because a lot of YouTube videos now actually at the bottom when you hover over and you see like the cog for the settings for resolution and whatnot. A lot of videos now, I don't know if a lot, but they're probably only certain types of videos, like maybe landscape ones or ones that say they have like a 360-degree offered version. They'll have like a little icon for like a VR to go into VR mode and whatnot. So I don't know. That might be a little cool to try out during quarantine. Kind of tinker around with that and see if there's anything there in terms of stuff I can make to keep myself preoccupied. I don't know. I wonder. I'm curious to know what you guys think about VR. If you think it's lame, if you think it's got big potential, and if you had a what you see yourself using it for the most if you were to have someone, send you a VR headset for no price. What would you use it most for? Um, and that might even be tough to answer because I feel like most people outside of maybe games and watching certain videos might not know what else it could be used for. And I think a lot of that expanding the use depends on, I think, the controllers. I think they're starting to focus now more on how to interact with stuff in VR. Like if you have like a glove that you put on and manipulate things. Because I think the like resolution, the sound, and the video is at a point where it's good enough that it's like super immersive. But it's some of the controllers that you have still break that immersion because you have to do weird kind of motions and joysticks and buttons and stuff to actually interact with stuff. So, yeah, I wonder. I'm curious to hear what your guys' thoughts are on VR and if you think it's you see if it was accessible to you, if you think you would use it a lot, you think it'll be a big part of your life going down the road, or if you think it's kind of just gimmicky and it'll just stay within the realms of kind of the super nerdy. Okay, so I think my last segment, I'm gonna try just doing a random thought. Random thoughts that I've had before, that I guess wanted to monologue about, and you guys can respond to and talk about, or just something to think about. Because I kind of want this show to be somewhat interactive. Like if I talk about something or pose a question on here, have people tweet at me, message me on Instagram, whatever, or propose their own questions that they want me to maybe talk about on the podcast and have other people think about. Trying to make it interactive rather than me just, you know, doing basically a half-hour long monologue on here. But random thought of the day is stairs. Now, I didn't look this up, so this whole segment may be irrelevant, but I feel like there wasn't one person who invented stairs. Like it seems like such an architectural no-brainer that if you looked at history and all these different civilizations, they all just had stairs because it just made sense on based on like the kinematics of how people move. And not just stairs, but like how many other things like that were naturally just like manifested and made across kind of the world in separate communities that had no contact, and you didn't really need any one person didn't need to actually invent it. I think stairs is one of those. I've refrained from looking this up, but I think I will now that it's on the podcast, and maybe come back with an answer next next episode. And that actually might be kind of a cool segment. I do a random thought or I have a question. Purposely don't look into it, talk about it on the podcast, like explain my reasoning, and then come back with an answer that might be interesting. And I'm wondering if there's any other things besides stairs, like maybe specifically within the realm of maybe just architecture, like maybe ladders. Maybe a ladder is something that's it just makes sense. Like simple things like a rope, not necessarily made out of the same stuff, but some kind of long rope like object that you just tie to things or use to pull things. I'm not sure. Shoes probably not, because there's I feel like there's too many different types of shoes. Like obviously someone invented the maybe like the sneaker or the boot or the sandal and whatnot. Um, but granted, there are slightly different types of stairs, or rather staircases, but for the most part, it's all the same. Yeah, so that was my random thought of the day. Stairs, an invention or an architectural no-brainer? Not sure. How are we doing for time here? I got a little bit more. Let's see. Um, Another random thought I had the other day was thinking about how how different how different our society would be if there was, say, like a second Earth. So just like another planet, exactly like Earth. Let's say like it's almost like an Earth clone that's in our solar system. And so it's be in the that Goldilocks zone. So if you don't know what that is, it's just like a certain distance around in orbit around its star where it's like the habitable zone for life, where like liquid water can exist and it's the right conditions for having life. So if we say sun's in the middle and we're orbiting, and then let's say directly on the opposite side of that orbit, so 6 months, I guess, in time away from us, there's another Earth. If we were, how would that make us think about, space exploration and getting to new new planets? How that would change our perception of it, because we probably would have done it already. So we know it's possible, if that makes sense. It would change our attitude towards going to Mars, because it's like, oh, we've already gone and colonized another planet, um, which was conveniently right near us. I feel like that would be pretty cool. And history probably would be very, very different, because just like when North and South America was discovered, there was discovered. I do that with air quotes, but by the Europeans and whatever from the quote unquote old world, there was this mad rush to colonize and extract resources and all these opportunities for wealth. And I feel like that other planet would be the same thing. There'd be all these companies and countries probably racing to get over there, and it'd be like another colonial race to go colonize this other planet and reap all its resources. So it'd be I don't know. I'm curious to see what you guys think. How how different our attitudes would be. Would it be just, do you think people would live and there'd be other big cities on that planet? Would it be, controlled by big large countries? You think the private sector would be able to get there first, and it would just be like a almost like our industrial planet? We would just extract resources from. I don't know, I'm wondering what you guys think, how different it would be. So that's my last random thought of the day. Hope everyone's quarantine is going as good as can be. Let me know what you're doing to entertain yourself. Obviously, I started this podcast to entertain myself, so I'm curious what creative things you guys have come up with to entertain yourself while being trapped in the house. And yeah, I think I'm going to cut it off here for today. Once again, follow on social media at the Brandon M. Best, and I'll be putting these up on YouTube as well. So I will see you guys next time.